So when I put this talk together, I put it together on the back side of another talk that I had done, learning from my friends that do DEF CON series. I wanted a series of talks, so this one follows I hacked a garage door opener, and it's how hard it is to tell a garage door opener company that I had done that. So this is me. If you want to reach out to me, I'm Jason at hackersforcharity.org. If you don't know about Hackers for Charity, it has a little to do with my t-shirt I have on. I've spent an awful lot of time in Africa bringing technology to people that have zero and supporting technology in places where that's really hard to do. I've hung out with a bunch of the crew that lived in Uganda for a long time. As you can see, Hackers with Tractors is a hashtag I'm trying to get pumped up. I think there's 2 of us now. I know Frank's one of them. You know, I turned my John Deere into a DEF CON Deere this year. I put all my DEF CON stickers on it. Good stuff. I'm hacking like it's 1998. I threw my first malicious tick mark at a website in 98. My wife came home and said, this guy named Bob O'Neill broke my application. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, because of the apostrophe. And I was like, all right, time to throw some apostrophes around. And, you know, the rest is history. I started reading a lot of books about it and doing as much as I could, following much the path the guy before me was talking about, where you know, learn about stuff and then you start educating about stuff and off you go. I'm a charity guy. So this year, my trip to Africa, I built a methane biodigester out of industrial waste that I found in Uganda. So this is, you know, I'm not only hacking websites, but I also do stuff like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you didn't have to buy firewood anymore? Some fair warning here. I showed this talk to my boss, and he said, this talk needs more Star Wars. And so I tried to put some in. Maybe you'll be able to see it. I don't know. If you're looking to hire, raise your hand. Is anybody looking to hire? No? Nobody's got open job recs? I'm sure there's plenty of people that are looking for jobs, but you might be sitting next to your colleague, and if you say that you are, that guy's looking to hire right there. He's a black ball, black ball. What for?
Web application penetration testing.
Web app pen testing. You?
Red Hat Consultants.
Red Hat Consultants. You?
Security analyst.
Security analyst. Jobs. There's jobs, guys. Don't, you know, if you're looking for a job, go talk to these guys. It's pretty easy to just chat with them about stuff. If you want to learn about what it is that I do, when I'm not standing in front of people rambling, I'm pretty easily hired. Any place that serves pizza and beer serves as a good venue for this. I'll happily sit down and tell you about my time in the Navy or whatever. If you want to learn about the research flaw talk, if you want to see what I had done, all the bits and pieces to hack into my garage door opener, that's on LazCon's website. If you go to the LazCon YouTube channel, I'm the guy that's the picture that is the channel picture. I don't know why they did that. They could have picked a better guy for that, for sure. But, you know, there it is. Everybody talks about Equifax, and at this point, I kind of consider them protected class corporate citizens. We shouldn't make fun of them anymore. They all know. If you want to come talk to me after the talk, I want to hear from you. Who's first con? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quite a few people in the room. I'm seeing more and more people first con, right? I'm not standing in front of the same faces anymore. It's great. All right, so let's dig into this thing. Is your company ready to receive this letter, this phone call, this tweet, this email, right? You have a security flaw, and I would like to tell you about it. Well, I did this, right? I called a company and said, I have found a security flaw. Now, in my case, it was a security flaw that I was extremely concerned with. I could open my garage door, right? How many of you live in a house where your primary entrance is your garage door? There's several, right? That man door between your garage and your house, do you ever lock that? Yeah, on accident now and then, right? Where's the key for that thing? I really wanted to understand, did I have some kind of IoT thing that was giving me problems, right? Because I plugged all this stuff in my house, and just like you guys, you know, I wanted my light bulbs to be a different color. I wanted to know if my garage was open or closed at night. I wanted to set up a system that would tell me, hey, if it's after midnight and my garage door is open, go close your garage door, right? Gives me a little button to do it. So I thought it'd be fun, right? So I sat down with a little bit of curiosity and a black hoodie, because that's how you do that, and I started hacking away, right? I started looking around. What are the things that are out there? That turns out turning on your light bulbs and getting the Bluetooth to give you your Wi-Fi password is interesting, right? That's very interesting. It's extremely applicable. However, if you're in my house pulling my Wi-Fi password off my Bluetooth light bulb, you're in my house already, right? I wanted to know, can I get into the house, right? I really wanted to understand that. So I looked around and I said, what do I got connected to the cybers, right? What did we plug in and forgot that we plugged in? And then I wanted to understand, could I cause some kind of harm or loss if there was something there? And so I sat down in my driveway and I pulled out my phone and I hooked up something called Burp Suite in my laptop and I pointed my phone at it and I started watching the traffic that everything was generating. I found out that my camera that was sitting on my mantle in my house is constantly beaconing out the position that my phone has told the service I'm at, right? That's something I'm not really that excited about. I also found out that that service that I'm running off that camera in my house is reading my email because it's giving me very specific suggested ads based on my insurance company that it knows about, and I know that because I see it in the communication stream, right? And so I wanted to understand how many of these things. So I opened my garage door up, I captured it in Burp, I sent the replay, and the garage closed, right? I fiddled with the position setting. The garage closed, I opened it, I closed it. And then I started doing standard AppSec pen testing stuff. Are they tearing sessions down? Can I move the session? Well, I want to understand, could I open someone else's garage remotely? That's really the thing that I wanted to do. Attack the API layer, open someone else's garage. Can anybody tell me what the research problem is with sitting in my driveway opening someone else's garage? I can't figure out if it worked, right? I have no idea if it's functioning correctly. But the good news is there's Twitter. So I tweeted out, hey, does anybody have one of these kinds of garage door openers? A buddy of mine in California is like, yeah, I totally have exactly the same one. Like, all right, here's how you install Burp. Here's how you put cert on your phone, right? Here's how you open your garage. Now give me these data elements, and I started manipulating it. I couldn't open his garage with my session. I was happy about that. But the replay attack was enough for me to call Chamberlain and say, hey guys, I think I found something. So what if they found something? If you are looking at your organization and thinking, oh no, a researcher may call me, the answer is they will. It doesn't matter what you put in your end user license agreement that says don't hack our stuff or security test it. It turns out that safety always trumps any crap you put in there, right? So if my goal is to make people more safe, I can hack you all I want, right? If that's really my goal and what I'm going to do. But there's some caveats to that, right? I have to report it to you. I have to go through responsible disclosure, that kind of stuff. But it's okay. Yeah, I'll also have to understand that they're going to call, right? It's going to happen. So, who are they going to call? Well, in my case, I couldn't figure it out. Went to their website, there's no abuse at, there's no security anything, there's no nothing, right? Their APIs didn't have anything in the headers to say, hey, if you're banging on this, let us know. Nothing, right? Who do you call in this situation? Anybody guess? The 800 number on the side of the box that it came in, right? That's all I got, so I called them. And I got a customer service agent, right? And they were very willing to help with resetting the pin on the little box on the outside of the house. They have to do that all the time. Take the battery out. You have to, yes, no, I don't need the box. I can open the door without it, right? I need to talk to someone else, right? And so I looked around and looked around and looked around, and I couldn't figure it out. And it turns out in our industry, we have no standard way for reporting. There's no standard way for the environment to set itself up so that I'll know who to report to. And there's no standard way for a researcher to go looking for reporting. It's kind of a bummer. If they get through, what's going to happen, right? There's probably no training. There's probably no one inside your organization that knows what to do if somebody goes, you got this bug, right? It's going to be difficult. So what we want to try to do is smooth this out a little bit. And the way you usually smooth things out like this is you have some kind of plan, right? So this is the bomb threat checklist that the FBI produces, right? And on this checklist, it's like, what's the, where's the bomb? When's it going to explode? They go through all this. They give you lots of room to write, where is it? When's it going to explode? Then down here, the exact wording of the threat, right? Over here, you're supposed to fill this out and say who you called, right? But there's really nothing else. Who am I supposed to call if somebody calls in a bomb threat? Get everybody out of the building, right? That's not stated on there anywhere. The FBI wants to go find the person that built the bomb. They built this checklist, right? They're not here to try to help get you out of the building. They're here to figure out who built the bomb because they want to go arrest them. You've got to have a good set of policies and procedures, a good understanding of where they're going to go. So a good place to start is by simply putting it on your website, right? When you load up any website today, there's a little icon that appears in the tab. Well, that happens because we've all agreed that if you put this one thing in this one place, the browser will put it there, right? Well, why can't we have the same thing? So security.txt is an idea, right? Why can't I just go to your domain /security.txt and I'll see who I can send an email to, maybe your PGP key there, so that I can encrypt the data that I'm sending. This is one possibility. There's already organizations that communicate with developers, with anybody that has a little bit of understanding today. This is the Etsy store's website. Is code your craft? Etsy.com/careers, right? This is a header. You don't see this anywhere on the page. You have to be looking for this, right? But there it is. So since I'm here already, I'm going to be looking at your website in Burp Suite. That's happening, right? That's how I browse the web, so it's happening. So while I'm there, you might as well give me a way to get a hold of you. It'd be a really great idea, right? I mean, we figured out a long time ago that these crawlers that are going around the internet, we want to make sure they don't go to certain parts of our website because maybe there's sensitive data there that you don't want to index and have people search later. So in this case, we've got, I pick on United a lot. If anybody follows me on Twitter, I'm sorry, I'm always picking on United on there. But this is United's disallow page, and it's only some of it, for robots.txt. What does this tell an attacker to do? This is at first place, right? There's a few guys in the room that are ex-Navy. Every time we pull into a new port, they publish a list of bars you weren't allowed to go to, right? The first one on the list is always where you ended up passed out at. But if we're going to have robots.txt, why don't we have humans.txt, right? Like, direct me around. Here's where maybe if you find an error message or something, you could report it back to me. I mean, there's got to be some way that we can communicate with each other. Pick one. I don't care which one, right? Just make it a little easier for the researcher to contact you. Now, if they're going to go side channel like I did, I had to, maybe you call a customer service line. Train them. Swing by. Hey, if somebody calls and says they're having a security issue, maybe we should do things with that. Perhaps a little rewards-based drilling, right? Just simply call in one day. And if they ask you this question, get them pizza or whatever. I don't know, right? What I'm trying to say is your customer service team can't be the place that I get tracked for 4 days, right? And if I'm constantly saying, no, I don't need my pin reset, you have a bug, right? And I said it in I don't know how many ways. You really have to be able to pick this up because if I get mad, I'm not going away, I'm going deeper, right? And that's the problem with trying to have a researcher be placated by silence, right? It doesn't work. So finally, I get past customer service and I land on a product manager's desk. Yay, right? We set up a phone call, I dial into it, and I explain everything that I found. I explain, basically I can open a garage door. If I can sit near your house and sniff your Wi-Fi, I'm for sure going to get your garage door. But there's a little known fact about how all these apps work. They constantly log in. So a little while ago when Florida had that hurricane come ripping through and all of the telecom companies turned on free Wi-Fi and made it wide open access, man, I'd have loved to have been sitting down there to watch everyone's passwords for their banks get flying through there, watch all the push notifications across the network, right? Because there was then no protection, right? If I get in, I control the access to the house, not just the garage. Now granted, the garage is pretty interesting. My garage got an old Volkswagen in it, a chainsaw, an axe, right? These aren't things I want just anybody grabbing and trying to come through the door, but it doesn't matter, I'll unlock the door anyway, right? Because I use the outside as my protection. So I explained to these guys, hey, you know, I'm just looking to see if you've done something that makes my house less secure. And they told me, security is our #1 priority, Mr. Kent. And I said, that's great. How many security guys are on the call? 0. They don't have a security team, and they've never tested their application, right? They make a machine that lifts the door because you're too lazy to get out of your car, right? But then they put it on the internet, and that step meant something that they weren't anticipating. So eventually they're going to get to you, or maybe not. Maybe they're going to get frustrated and turn away, right? But if they get through to you, you're going to be basically at that point in the middle of an incident response, right? You need to treat this like it's an incident. The security team, product management, you know, you're going to want to go talk to the researcher. And don't approach them like, I have all the legal right in the world to sue you. What are you calling me for, right? Approach them with a little bit of humbleness and a little bit of thank you for telling us, right? You have to be a little bit careful here because if your first step is to call the lawyers, right? I mean, all of us in the room take a bite out of the chair a little bit when somebody says lawyer, right? If I'm on the other end of this, I know I'm open to get sued. Don't do that, right? Don't call the lawyers. Maybe you could have an adult discussion with them. So as an example of this, there's a guy named Jan Olberg who's Finnish or Swedish, I can never remember which. And he goes around looking for cross-site scripting on websites. If you open up your web logs, you're going to see this guy for sure banging on your website trying to find cross-site scripting. And if he finds it, he's very good about reporting it to you, if he can figure that out, right? And if you fix it, he's very good about tweeting that you have fixed it. In 30 days, though, he tweets you have it. And he doesn't care, right? You get 30 days from the first time that he notifies you until he tweets it. So I worked for a security company that we decided we're going to move our blog onto a different platform. And when we did that, the developer that put it together forgot to put request.validate in on all the search parameters, and we ended up with cross-site scripting. Jan called us, and I said, well, what do you want, man? You know, like, what's the thing that you want? You want us to pay you for this? You want a t-shirt? You know, what is it? And he's like, I don't want cross-site scripting. That's what I want, right? He's very altruistic and he just doesn't like this menace, right? And he wants to get rid of it. And it could very well be that the researcher that's phoning you just wants it fixed, right? And so a promise of I'm going to fix it might be the thing that'll get you there. So calling the lawyers is probably going to be their worst fear, unless you're somebody like Jan that lives in a country where what he's doing isn't illegal, right? He's allowed to do this thing, so he's going to do it anyway. But it really depends, right? When somebody calls you, we often go through this phase, or phase change, if you will. This is called the direct curve. This is for people that are experiencing change, right? So if you think about my company that has the machine that lifts the door, when I first called them, they said, well, that's not a problem, right? It looks really hard to do. They had a bunch of this kind of stuff, and they basically told me they didn't care, right? And I had to take them through the next couple of steps just to get them to start looking at this thing. So when I first called them, they were firmly planted in denial, right? This is the headwaters of the Nile. This is where we do a lot of our work in Africa. They were firmly planted here. That looks really hard to do. What is this burp thing, right? The internet, that's still around. I mean, they really didn't have a good grasp of this. And so it was up to me to explain to them why it was a bad thing, right? Big clue here, if a researcher calls you and says you have a problem, you have it, right? That's really hard to do is what I get, right? How many of you guys have received or given pen testing reports and the answer on the other side is who would do that, right? Yeah, hackers, that's who, right? The people that want in. Denial doesn't affect change, right? This doesn't move us forward. We have to try to get to the point where we're actually trying to change, right? Which means we've got to move through this direct curve kind of as fast as we can. But if you call a researcher's research impossible or difficult or whatever, let me let you in on something. They know that, right? They spent months doing this. And so they know how hard it is to do. They're trying to simplify it for you. And if it's your lawyers that are on the phone, they want to understand it. So dig into the researcher's motivation. Maybe they're looking for a job. Maybe you need to hire them, right? This might be a good thing. Maybe it isn't, right? You don't want to accept this as extortion for sure. Oftentimes it's just bragging rights, right? I've hacked a thing. Yay, right? And then you move on. In my case, I wanted to go get a good talk at DEF CON, right? Go hack stuff so you can get on the stage, whatever, right? I wanted to figure out if nobody's going to break into my house. Do they want a t-shirt? Do they want a bounty? Do they want your legal team to write them a note? Call them and ask them, right? Have a good conversation with them. But if at any point the researcher goes adversarial and starts to try to extort you, call the police immediately. Do not negotiate with them, right? They're not there for your benefit. They're trying to do something else. Go after them, right? And I think that that's something that not enough organizations really understand is if they catch an attacker, they just sort of brush them away, and it's like, no, we need to put some penalties behind this so we don't see so much of that. So I had a phone call with these guys. That meeting went well, right? Me and the lawyers and the product manager. The team will now go away and validate what I have told them I can do is actually something that someone can do. Again, this is one of those points where it's like, I've spent a lot of time on this. To me, it sounds like you're trying to get me to just go away. And I gotta warn you, man, if you start to do this to a researcher, keep this in mind. It's a trap, right? You're going to be putting a bad face to the researcher, and the researcher is going to be aggravated by it, right? And you really don't want something like that. Silence is not gold, right, in these situations. Ignoring them means you don't care as much as they do about the problem you have, right? I mean, that really is what it is. So during the Chamberlain disclosure, I called them and said, you guys haven't looked at this. We've reached a point where I'm out of responsible disclosure. I'm no longer going to redact your name from my slides. I'm going to tell everyone about who you are and what this problem is. And they said, hey, it's CES week. We're super busy. So you're going and selling more of this thing that's broken? Excellent. Do you tell them it's broken? And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, why aren't they answering my emails, right? Why aren't they listening to this thing? I told them that my house now has a vulnerability because of them. Give us more time, please, before you disclose. Sure. The standard responsible disclosure in our industry is 30 days. If I call you and tell you there's a flaw, you have 30 days, right? But I know for a fact that they weren't ready for me to call, right? So I was trying to be nice to them. But in reality, they were just trying to get me to, move on to the silence phase where we don't talk to each other anymore. But something that you should keep in mind, keep your enemies close. If somebody has spent a long time picking at this wound that you have, maybe they got a little deeper and figured out a better way to execute, right? Maybe they've dug down into your systems and understand that you have no security practices, right? It could very well be that you're going to make them mad, and that's probably not the best motivation that a researcher is going to have. I was just in San Francisco with a client, and it was during Dreamforce. Does everybody know what Dreamforce is? Has anybody ever heard of Salesforce.com? Salesforce.com throws this shindig every year that makes Black Hat look like a tiny little party shoved in a closet, right? The entire city is affected by it. The hotel that I tend to stay at costs $120 a night, was $904 a night. I ended up having my plans changed, and I needed to check out of my hotel early. I walked down to the front desk and said, hey, I got to check out of my hotel early. Now, I travel a ton. I'm an elite level traveler. This is normal, right? They normally are very nice about this. And they're like, tell you what we'll do. We'll only charge you half for tonight. And I said, if you charge me more than $0, it will be my room for tonight. You will not rent it out, right? I'll sit a camera in there and I'll happily wait for you to open the door, right? But now the researcher's motivation has changed. So I look at the back of my door. You ever stay in a hotel that has a little placard that says the maximum rate that they can charge you for the room on it? Guess what? They were charging me more than that amount. So I went down there and said, oh, and by the way, since you want to treat me like this, you can't charge me $450 a night for this room. It's $399.99, it's the max rate. It's on the back of the door, right? And they were like, oh, this is my idea of don't make the researcher mad because they're going to find new motivations, right? They're going to start to go look at this thing in a different way. I also tweeted to @Dreamforce, everyone look at the back of your room door, right? So as you can imagine, checkout the next day was probably fun for all these hotels, right? All up and down the peninsula in San Francisco. You need to make sure that you're treating this like an ongoing incident. There should be a project manager associated with it. There should be someone on the security team that's tasked with following up, right? This is an incident that's going on. Communication is extremely important. Turning it off just changes the way things are, right? Resistance is futile. Eventually they say, maybe you're right. Maybe we do have this problem. Yeah, maybe. So they said, well, I see you spent some time on this. They still don't really believe it's something that they need to go fix. Any idea why they have such reticence to go fix it? They don't know how. It costs money. Yeah. They literally can't. And so what it was they needed to code a new change, ship a new mobile app, right? Like it was a bunch of things, and they had bought all this, right? So the researcher had found something that they had purchased, and they didn't have good contracts for security inside of it. That meant they had to go purchase another one. But at least we started moving through the curve, right? So now we're on resistance to change. Well, there's some kind of change, but I don't really want to act on it now. When I was first employed in the information technology realm, I worked for a place called UUNet. I controlled most of the domain naming system on the internet and a lot of the traffic. And one of the ladies that I worked with one day, they said, we're going to move you from this office to that office. And she said, no, you're not, right? And locked herself in her office. You're an adult. You're moving, right? And it took a long time to get her up to commitment, right? Where she actually moved down to the next office. But it was crazy to watch, and people are like that, right? Like that's how people are. The researcher is often here to help, and I was here to help. I called you because I want to help. Please know that, right? If you can't figure it out, ask the researcher to show you again. Ask the researcher to instrument your environment. Ask the researcher to help you set it up, because that's going to be really important, right? Their biggest snag was burp. In order to split their cert, you got to import the burp cert to trust it, right? And that they had difficulty with that. I got on the phone with them, export it, okay, email it to yourself, right, click it, there you go. But if you don't know how to do it, it takes a second. If you believe this thing isn't important, right, ask how it can impact. What's the real risk here? Well, I could sit outside somebody's house and open their garage door, right? Like, pretty simple. Probably in an uncontrolled way, in a way that you don't expect it. But that researcher, you need to at least offer some sort of compensation if it's not just, we'll put you on our kudos page or whatever. The next phase is called exploration, right? And in exploration, the key phrases that you're going to hear are things like, well, we've given this some thought. What would you do, right? So I make a bunch of suggestions, or I give them a path to remediation in some way. I've put a lot of thought into this, right? I've spent time with it. Where can we go for help, right? Who could help us with this problem? These are really good questions, and they make me believe that, yeah, we're now moving through the curve, and we are accepting the need for change, right? They're exploring the situation and understanding that this is a real problem, and we need to go solve it. But they're not quite there. Moving forward, in their case, meant shifting into forward, right? They weren't doing anything to begin with. The researcher's probably going to offer solutions. I offered them a bunch of solutions. Pin the cert, go get a pen test, figure out what's wrong with the code. And they started responding with different questions, right? But you have to remember that solutions have impact, some kind of impact. So take, for instance, crack, right? Does anybody know what crack is? What is it?
It's the new Wi-Fi vulnerability.
New Wi-Fi vulnerability built into Wi-Fi since WPA2 came out. If you have something running WPA2 today, it's probably vulnerable to crack. How do you fix it?
Patch it.
You got to patch it. Okay. We tell enterprises to do this all the time, right? Go patch your servers. How many of you have something that's vulnerable to crack right now? Everybody raise your hand. Right? So how do we fix it? How do we know it's fixed? How do you know that the firmware is ready? How do you know the vendor fixed it, right? This is not a simple problem. And by the way, this is how enterprises are dealing with things. Think about the car hacking stuff, the impact that it had. How many of you guys have heard about Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek hacking the cars? Okay. So over a over a mobile phone connection, they were able to connect directly to a vehicle and SSH into it, change the firmware on the vehicle to their own modified firmware because Fiat doesn't believe in code signing, right?
It was air gapped.
And it was air gapped. Well, software air gapped. They went after that thing looking for a flaw. They found one. What happened, though? Look at the impact of their research. Sprint had to change the way that network worked, right? They had to redesign a network that was already in place because of the vulnerability, right? Chrysler, Fiat, whatever their name is, had to go send a recall notification out. 1.5 million cars had to go get their firmware upgraded. And some people, they didn't go. So what did they do? This is the best part of this. They emailed USB keys around and said, plug this into your car, which Charlie then immediately copied with his own firmware, made copies of the notification, and started mailing them out, right? The impact is huge, maybe, right? Think about ATMs, right? Think about ATMs just for a minute. I'm not the first guy that has disclosed a problem, and I'm probably not the last. Right, but a good example of this is Barnaby Jack. Barnaby found a flaw in an ATM, right? I can dump this thing. I can make the motors turn on and shoot the money out, right? Now, if you're an ATM company, that's not good, right? But if you're an ATM company, how many endpoints do you have? Millions. They're plugged into modem lines and gas stations. They're plugged into banks. They're plugged into, who knows what kind of kiosks. Anybody been to Vegas? There's ATMs, those bill changer weird machines, right? So there's a lot of this impact that's out there. Barnaby calls, the ATM company says, okay, we'll fix that, right? So they start working on a fix, or they start waiting to fix it. We were not sure of the timeline that they had to fix it, but he was going to go to DEF CON and talk about this thing, right? Now they got the lawyers involved, right? They issue a cease and desist letter. It's too hard to go fix all these things. It is, right? So what ended up happening was it delayed a year, right? Barnaby waited until the next year. They had to go fix all this stuff. And it was Diebold ATMs, it was NCR ATMs, and cashing an ATM out, right, is huge news. Everyone looked at this thing, and they had to have it fixed anywhere that they could. Turns out there's additional flaws in these systems, but this was just an example of, hey, it's hard to fix, right? For my company, it was simple to fix. They just needed to put a fix in their mobile app and send it out, right? Republish a new app, not that hard. All right, so 30 days, 60 days, 120 days, whatever time the researcher's giving you, eventually, time's up, right? Eventually, they're going to start talking about it. They're going to either talk about it with their peer group or they're going to talk about it in a situation like this, right? The fun thing about that is you lose control of that, right? You're sort of in control when you're in the middle of this Drek curve in the first 3 phases. But when time is up, you lose control of the information, and it's important to have that sink in. You're going to lose control of this. They're going to tweet about it. They're going to say stuff about it. Think about Equifax, right? They lost control of the fact that 143 million records of the U.S. public have been stolen from a database that none of us opted into. That information made their CEO go on stage and say, yeah, we probably should have done a better job of that, right? He sat in front of Congress and said, scanner missed it, right? Losing control of the information means you have to react, and if you're bad at that, you're going to sound like those guys did. But he got $85 million to quit, so that'll teach him, right? Keywords for I'm in the exploring phase. We have additional questions, right? Problematic architecture stuff. They had these APIs that when you read the API calls, you were like, okay, garage door open, garage door closed. Like, none of this stuff is obfuscated. It's so easy to pick apart. I can get, all kinds of data off of this. We need to